Третього раз. Раз.
А тільки Павло, знаєш що, треба з якогось телефона, бо я ж не вмію нічого нікуди присилати. Він же просив спеціально якось вислати його. Назарі. Ну він тут написав і дав ссылку. А може Світлана, ну давай Світлана буде знімати на її телефон і вона і вийшла.
О, дід.
О, дід. No, we need them now because сказав, що до 18. Я йому написала, що це не добре, до 18 не вправді. Зробили зараз і все. А де вона?
Слава Україні! Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Alexander, it's perfect. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, or rather good evening, my friends. Welcome to another one of our Ukrainian rallies, where people can participate as much as they like, because we are not, of course, like our opposition, my friends. Our opposition always shies away from a conversation. But we love conversation, we love discourse. And that is one of the main values of this country. Now, my friends, today is an important day. Because today, we need to send our support to a great hero of Ukraine, Alexander Usyk. One of the most famous Ukrainians nowadays. Not too long ago, he fought against Tyson Fury in a relatively close fight. However, the referee, he did pull off Usyk one time too many. It was a little bit suspect, but alas, it's all good. Now we are here today for many reasons, my friends, and particularly today, one of those reasons is to give support to Alexander Usyk, to beat that individual once again, to beat Tyson Fury again. Fury, personally I used to like him. Tyson Fury, I used to like him. However, Fury has had the absolute worst attitude after his defeat to Usyk. You know what he said immediately after he was defeated? He said, of course they gave him the win, his country is at war. What kind of a message is that to send? I mean, look, nobody wins all the time throughout their life. Sometimes we have to take an L. Sometimes we have to take a loss. It's as simple as that. But we can't be sore losers like that. Tyson Fury was a very sore loser last time. And by the way, he still didn't lose enough weight. Although he should have lost a little bit of weight before fighting Usyk again. So, I guess it means he's not taking the fight very seriously, which is a big mistake, because Usyk is a master of his craft. Now, my friends, we give support to Usyk today. But before we go any further, we're going to start this rally, as we always do, with the Ukrainian anthem.
Героям слава,
Слава нації!
смерть ворогам,
Україна!
понад усе,
Україна!
понад усе,
Україна!
понад усе.
Героям України тричі!
Слава, слава, слава,
Ворогам України тричі!
смерть, смерть, смерть.
Now, my friends, Usyk, of course, once again, he's a symbol of Ukrainian resistance right now. But this rally is not exclusively about him. He is but one topic that we are here to talk about. The main topic is the same topic as we always come to bring up here. The solutions, direct solutions to this war that was started by the Russian terrorist regime, escalated by the Russian terrorist regime, and that will only end when the Russian terrorist regime is finally put in its place at long last. But of course, my friends, that is not going to happen with limp-wristed rhetoric, with kind words of appeasement, or with mean words of condemnation. That's not how we're going to end this war. It's impossible that way. This war is going to end when the Russian terrorist regime feels like it cannot afford to fight it anymore. Or if it ends, which would be the best case scenario for Ukrainians and for Russians, but that seems unlikely nowadays, my friends. It would seem like the free world doesn't want to get its hands dirty with the Russian terrorist regime. It wants to simply sit on the sidelines and let Russia collapse into itself, which is not a bad strategy. However, it would be even better if they managed to save lives with the whole endeavor. To save the lives of the Ukrainians, for example, who are defending Europe and the free world from the terror tide in the east. Now, does that mean that Russia would declare war against the USA if it were not fighting Ukraine? No, my friends. It obviously does not. The United States is far more powerful than Ukraine, Russia, the EU, and any country in the world, honestly. However, the point is, the truth of the matter is, my friends, that Russia is punching way above its weight in terms of how it manages to mess with people's minds, mess with people's heads. And we cannot allow that to happen. You see, many people are looking into the future. The Russian terrorist regime looks into the past. They want to bring back that past at any cost. Because in that past, they are powerful. In that past, they can commit any atrocity known to humanity and fully get away with it scot-free. That is not a future that we should allow them to achieve. A return to the past. We don't have any time machines, my friends. But we don't need one to return into the past. All it takes is a genocidal leader who decides to simply erase history, erase what humanity has learned, and bring us back to the Dark Ages. And then, they will have their authoritarian rule over a bunch of peasants dying of all kinds of preventable diseases, my friends. Russia continuously pushes for this stupid idea that supposedly there were promises made to them that were broken. What promises? What treaties were broken to Russia? None. But Russia broke every treaty it has made with Ukraine. Every single one. The Ukraine-Russia Friendship Treaty? Broken. The Budapest Memorandum? Broken. The Minsk Agreements? Broken. Every single one. But of course, that doesn't stop the Russian terrorist regime from spreading their own alternative version of reality. You could call it something of the sort of the Twilight Zone. That is the reality that many of them live in nowadays. But that is not the reality we should allow to spread, my friends. You know, when I was coming here today to this rally, I noticed that there was a little girl staring at me very attentively. I thought for a second, what might she be thinking about? What do children think when they look at adults? When they stare at them with curiosity? And I came up with a conclusion. They see what they will become in the future. They see hope. They see something that will guide them in the future. Something, some people who will give them a hand if they struggle. However, that is exactly why, my friends, we cannot allow ourselves to grow complacent. We cannot become a generation of men, children, who cannot afford to speak up when they have to speak up. We cannot afford to become depoliticized, like Russia has made their population fully and completely outside of politics.
Thank you.
But you know what's the funny part about all of that, my friends? Although the Russians, the average Russian living in Russia is going to be completely depoliticized, he's going to feel like he's outside of politics. Politics is never outside of him. He is being influenced by his country's politics every single day that goes by. And this idiotic idea, oh, you know, all politicians are the same, why even bother voting, they're all the same garbage. I oppose the government is the enemy of the people. This is stupid, my friends. There are many countries in the world where their governments, their people in charge, have fully and completely wrestled control over the country, over the people who do not have that level of power. There's countries like North Korea, like Russia, like Ayatollah Iran, the list goes on. But in this country, we have the ability to speak, we have the ability to make our voice be heard. We cannot give that up so easily. We cannot simply stand aside and allow ourselves to become slaves of the people in charge. That is what the Russian terrorist regime wants to bring about. A world where leaders hold complete power over their people. That's why they propped up Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Well, now he's back in Russia with his overlords, of course. Where else would he go? Where else would a genocidal maniac in charge of a country who has been deposed by his people go? But a country ruled by another genocidal maniac who might be deposed if, of course, there is that opportunity. But my friends, I have to apologize to you all for last time we had a rally. My sincerest apologies, because I forgot a very important thing that I should have spoken about. I forgot about the beautiful clip that I've seen of a kindergarten in Russia, where they had their father Christmas figure and Snegurочка, which is basically like the daughter of Santa Claus in Russia. They were there talking to the kids in front of a Christmas tree. But there was another character, very interesting character, that they called Barmaley Liberal. As someone who watched the video, it is very funny. It is quite funny. You know what they do there to this Barmaley the Liberal? Santa Claus and his daughter, they stand their ground and they bravely say, Barmaley the Liberal, go away. And eventually when the kids joined in the fun, then the individual, Barmaley, who by the way was completely dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, he walked away scoffing as if he were the devil chased away by some crosses. Very interesting stuff, my friends. Now, it's good fun to watch it, it's a good laugh. However, at the same time, on this topic of children, my friends, this is what the Russian terrorist regime is doing to their children. They're preparing them for hatred. They are preparing them to be meat in their future conquests, in their future wars. And in the meantime, here in the West, we look at Russia with eyes of complete ignorance, without knowing what's actually happening on the other side of this new iron curtain that Putin has built. My friends, this has to stop. Know your enemy. Know Russia. Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Fight the jets for Ukraine.
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 Fight Fighter jets for Ukraine.
Fighter jets for Ukraine.
Air defense 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 for Ukraine.
Long-range missiles 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 for Ukraine.
Let Ukraine strike back.
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 That would be, my friends, the best way of ending this war. Finally provide Ukraine with what's needed to end it for good. Negotiating with thieves, with traitors, with war criminals is a fool's errand. It's something fools do when they can't think of anything else to do, or something that weaklings do when they are powerless to do anything else. However, my friends, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Everybody knows this saying. And to treat with Russia again, to try to negotiate with Russia again, is to be fooled many times, many times, more than just the 2 times this saying speaks of. We must be more intelligent than that. We must be wiser than that. We can't allow them to simply dictate the rules left, right, and center. They don't care about the rules. The Russian terrorist regime has been violating international agreements all over the place. We can give so many examples of this, starting with their war crimes, ending with the many treaties they made with Ukraine, with the US, with the UK, that they have violated with this war. Now sometimes people call this war illegal. And the Russophiles, they scoff at that and say, oh, you know, can there be any illegal wars? It's not a very funny joke, I have to say. There can be legal wars indeed, if a country's leadership has made promises and then they broke those promises. They can be held accountable. But the Russian terrorist regime, it does not care about any of that. They care about one thing and one thing only: whether or not they are going to be held accountable for their crimes. They don't care about the gravity of their actions. They don't care about what they have done, how many people have died. They only care whether or not there's going to be repercussions for them. And if there aren't any, then they will do it all over again. That, my friends, is a reality that people should wake up to. We are here to speak about that reality. Something that people should understand nowadays so that they can make an informed decision based on the facts at hand. A decision of what needs to be done to stop the Russian terrorist regime, to find a way of dealing with them. For that we come here every week, my friends, on Wednesdays at 6, on Fridays at 6, and on Sundays at 3. Everyone is welcome to join us. All of the passerbys, all the people who are stopping by because they heard something that caught their attention for whatever reason. You're all welcome, my friends. You're welcome to ask us a question. You're welcome to interact with us. You're welcome to join us and add your voice to ours. That is a very important thing to say, so that people do not feel like this is some kind of a VIP group of people who show up here. No, anyone is welcome to join us, my friends. That is our message, one of many. And the main reason why, like you, my friends, if you like, you can always join us here, you know. See, we've come to do some shopping. That's very nice. You know, my sister loves this city. She loves to come here to this city sometimes to do some shopping of her own. Don't feel like I'm putting you on the spot, please. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. But, you know, thank you for listening to us, to what we have to say today. And of course, as usual, my friends, we are perfectly willing to listen what our opposition also says. But the problem with that is our opposition does not speak. Our opposition either remains silent or it screams and shouts incoherently. They do not have opinions. They have impulses. And that is not how we should direct ourselves in this world, my friends. Not with impulses, but with reason. By understanding the world around us, and by moving forward, considering the best choices at hand. Now, of course, we have to always mention the situation at hand at the moment on the battlefield. And the situation is quite grim, my friends. We need to make sure that people know this. Ukraine is not being provided with everything that Ukraine needs to win this war. It's not even being provided with what it needs to endure. Right now at this moment, my friends, the Russians are sending their meat in many ways against the Ukrainian people. They're sending everything they have at their disposal. Олександр, будь ласка, у нас є щось, щоб я не сів? Дякую. Thank you. Now, my friends, it needs to be said, the world seems ignorant to the wider scope of the actions of Russia. They have been perpetrating a full-scale hybrid war against the free world. They've been employing their botcons. They've been employing everything and anything just in order to gain the minutest advantage over the free world. They are not only at war with Ukraine, my friends, although Ukraine is the country they're fighting the most directly. They are fighting against all of you. Every single person who lives carefree in the free world would not be so carefree if they knew what Russia does to stop them from sleeping soundly every night, to stop them from knowing what happens in their country and in the rest of the world. If people knew what kind of misinformation Russia spreads, they would be in an uproar. But alas, people do not know. And in fact, the uproars seem to be controlled by Russia. Like the big riots that happened here in the United Kingdom months ago. A truly, truly disgusting endeavor, my friends. Based on ignorance, hatred, and pure and unadulterated, or rather, very much adulterated misinformation. My friends, people went outside to scream and shout and blame others, when those they were blaming had nothing to do with the crimes they were screaming and shouting about. They went outside to destroy, to vandalize, to scare people into submission. And it was all based on a lie, on ignorance, misinformation. My friends, thank you very much, my friend. Thank you. Hello, I'm Slav. Thank you very much. Well said, well said. You know, very well spoken right there. Now, my friends, we are here to tackle that misinformation, but we should tackle that misinformation everywhere. Wherever we go, wherever we are, whoever we are speaking to, we need to make sure that people know the truth about what's going on in Ukraine and how it influences every single person on earth, not just the people in Ukraine. About how the fact that Russia has blocked the grain shipments out of Ukraine caused the food price to rise. Some people might not understand why that is. I mean, why is it that if you stop grain shipments, all the other types of food also rise up in terms of their price? Economics can sometimes be difficult to comprehend. Hopefully, our friend here, Thomas, the economist, maybe he will have a few words to say about that. He does. Oh, very good, very good. I'll take you up on that, Thomas. Thank you. You know, he will be speaking about that in more detail, my friend. Me, I'm a layman. I'm not an economist. However, every single person on earth has the obligation to know at the very least the bare basics of how this kind of stuff works. Money is the blood of a nation, and Russia finds itself with a terrible case of anemia nowadays. They don't have enough foreign currency in their country. The ruble is still very low. If I'm not mistaken, it's still at around 100 rubles per dollar, if I'm not mistaken. And doesn't seem to be getting any better, my friends. Why might that be? Because Putin is putting all of his chips into this one game, into this one possibility, that the West is simply going to let him off the hook. Now, as I mentioned before, my friends, I am now feeling a little bit more well, I wouldn't say positive, but more comfortable with Trump's record. It has improved substantially since before he was declared the president of the United States of America. It has improved quite a lot. He has had meetings with other politicians. He has been speaking with more sense nowadays. Less of that flashy language of the sort of, less of that flashy rhetoric of the sort of, oh, you know, we're going to end the war in a day, in 2 days, in 10 days, in a week. 24 hours, exactly, thank you. You know, it reminds you a little bit of what Putin was saying when he was about to invade Ukraine and what his underlings were saying. But alas, now Trump has changed its rhetoric for the better, which is a good sign. You know, the free world, it needs more unity. It needs more understanding. It doesn't need people to start chipping away at the trust the different countries of the free world have in each other. That is what freedom is, to be cooperating with each other. We can't have the complete and utter mute cooperation like an authoritarian regime has. We don't have that here. That is, I guess, that can be called the weakness of the free world. But at the end of the day, my friends, it's a strength. It's a strength because people will much rather live in a country that is free than to live in a country that enslaves them and binds them to their will and forces them to do their bidding. Nobody wants to live like that. Now, my friends, many messages we are here to send. But the most important one is for people to stay informed in terms of what happens around them. You know, today I watched a video about gambling addicts nowadays. It was very informative. I had an idea how it functions, but I didn't think it was that bad, especially with the online gambling. Now that, my friends, is the kind of mental gymnastics, the kind of mental manipulation that Russia thrives in the most. It functions a little bit similar to a casino. It tries to use people's biases, people's inherent thoughts against them. Have you ever thought about it? If there was a high likelihood of winning something in a casino, how would casinos even function? How would they have enough money to pay all their employees? It would be impossible, my friends. Obviously, the house is always winning. The house always wins. Casinos always win if you go and play. And the same can be said about Russia. In this world of information, there is also a tendency for misinformation, unfortunately. And that misinformation needs to be tackled by every single person who knows better. We cannot lack in our conviction and in our desire to show people the truth. We cannot simply stay quiet in the corner and not tell people what's going on in Ukraine, especially when the conversation goes there. You know, I have had a few very interesting conversations about politics that eventually transitioned towards conversations about Ukraine. And it is difficult for me to say this, but many people have no idea what's going on in Ukraine. Despite the substantial coverage the war has gotten at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. People have no clue, my friends, because people do not look into this. Do you see any missiles, any Russian bombs, any Russian drones falling in this beautiful city we are in right now? Of course not. There's no such thing here. Unfortunately so. We would not wish anyone to go through the same thing that so many people are going through in Ukraine. However, it needs to be said, my friends, that we need to force ourselves to open our eyes sometimes so that we see the truth and so that we are not left behind by the winds of change, so that we understand what's happening in the world around us and so that we are able to deal with it for our best interest, for our best benefit. Because if we do not know any of that, my friends, we are simply left behind in ignorance. And that is not something that can be called the future to strive towards. World, wake up!
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 All together, we will win!
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals!
Tribunal for Russia war criminals!
Tribunal for Russian war criminals!
Tribunal for Russia war criminals!
Tribunal for Russian war criminals!
Tribunal for Russia war criminals!
More sanctions on Russia!
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 Seize Russian assets!
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 And now, my friends, we are going to have a short musical break.
Україні! Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації! Україна! 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 Нашим славам! захисницям тричі. Слава! Слава! Слава!
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on typical British December night. A nice bit of rain, a bit cold, and a bit of wind. Seeing the dedicated people out here tonight, so thanks for all coming along. Tonight, I'd like to follow up on topics I usually talk about, which is firstly that the first casualty of war is always the truth, and that Russia and a lot of other belligerent powers always lie. So what you have to do when you're looking at the statements that come out from various belligerents is not at the direct statement, but at other evidence which backs up what's been said. So tonight what I'd like to talk about is Putin's speech earlier in the week, and the Russian economy, the Russian interest rates that were announced today will be going to be kept stable, and what the real implications of all this are, rather than what the rhetoric behind it is that we all keep hearing about. And I'll also address the Russian grain harvest this year. As I always say, I'm very happy to take any questions. If anyone wants to ask anything, I'm very happy to try and answer it for you. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is probably a very controversial subject to be talking at a Ukrainian rally, and that's about the quality, probably the only quality person in Putin's entourage, the only really effective person in Putin's entourage is a rather maths-like middle-aged lady who runs the Russian central bank. The quality of this individual who's managed to keep Russia in several wars for much longer than would be expected
Відео є?
has to be admired by central bankers everywhere. The way she takes prompt action, despite the fact that she gets a lack of support from the other members of the government, is actually quite impressive. And she has actually kept Russia in the war a lot longer than it would be able to do otherwise. I'm of course talking about Nabila, who for the first time ever was openly criticised by Putin this week. So the quality of this woman goes back to the original annexation of Crimea by Russia and the Little Green Men. There was actually an economic run on Russia at that time, which, as a result of Nabila's prompt action, the restriction on foreign currency transactions and interest rate rises, etc., managed to keep the Russian economy going. And that was by and large overlooked by most people, but Putin took note of the fact that she kept the economy going, even though in later in 2022 he did actually fail to keep her advice about what was actually going to go on in Ukraine. So she's kept the Russian economy going, and she's always been quite willing to rise interest rates against her main opponent, which is actually the Russian Ministry of Finance, which seems to act completely independently of her, which is why you get the mismatch and the overheating economy of a great deal of money being spent on the industrial complex in Russia at the same time that she's putting up interest rates, which is actually quite contradictory. But from an economic point of view, her trying to dampen the economy through rising interest rates is actually the sensible thing to do. Now, the reason I wanted to draw attention to Putin's speech was this week he announced that interest rates have been too high for too long, and perhaps this wasn't a good thing. And this literally was yesterday. Now, for observers of the Russian economy, you'll know that
Хто ще є,
inflation
хто
is
когось
actually
вже
high,
немає тут?
quoted 8-9%. As an individual, I find it very hard to believe how you can quote inflation rates 8-9%, when the price of domestic products like potatoes going up 70%, eggs going up 50%, and even onions going up 20%. How you can end up with an inflation rate of some less than 10% is actually completely beyond me. And if you actually watch the YouTube videos of prices in Russian supermarkets, none of them are even remotely at 10%. So the quoted interest rates of Russia are about, the quoted inflation rates of Russia are about 10%. How they can even begin to think people are believing those is actually beyond me. But one of the implications of this is Russian pensions go up at the rate of quoted interest rates. So real Russian pensioners have probably seen at least a 20% decrease in what they're actually earning this year. So they will actually be worse off. Also, Russians spend, because they're a relatively poor country, spend a lot more on their food than people in the West do. So this will be a significant impact on the actual lifestyle of the average Russian. Now, one of the things that Nabila has always been very not happy, but prepared to do is rise interest rates to dampen inflation. And we've seen that basic inflation in Russia has been going up dramatically. And yet, yesterday, despite a significant run of rising interest rates, it was decided today they weren't actually going to rise interest rates above the record 21%. Now this, to my mind, is obviously a political decision rather than an economic decision, because all the drivers there for rising interest rates are still there, and if anything are actually getting worse. And yet, for some reason, Russia has decided not to raise its interest rates. My own view on this was, well, firstly, I agree with the majority of economists, this is against the expectations, but I think this is a retrograde step for the Russian economy, and the fact that Nubila has been undermined by others will in itself adversely affect confidence in the Russian economy. So the mere fact that Russian interest rates didn't go up today isn't, to my mind, an indication of a strong economy, but an indication of political interference into someone who's actually competent in running the economy. And this will undermine confidence in the Russian ruble, which is already up at well above 100 rubles to the dollar and gradually getting worse. So I'd say that in the next week we're going to see the Russian ruble go up to about probably 110, 115, simply because even the markets that are left, the very thin markets that are left, are going to lose even more confidence in the Russian ruble. And this is something to look out for. So my expectation is this short keeping interest rates at this 21% is probably going to be overruled in January, about the 20th, when the next meeting is, because the Russian economy will take a dive, because there'll be even less confidence in the ruble. The other thing to note about the ruble is the international market in rubles is very, very thin, and as a result, Russia, if it wanted to and had the reserves, should be able to support the ruble, but it's not actually doing that. It's going out. It has a very minor interference in the market. In the end, it's losing out. And the other thing that's worth calling out about Nubila is we've talked about inflation, but she also runs her primary job is governor of the Central Bank of Russia, which is the central bank of Russia. But one of the things that she's been very, very effective in doing, which is often overlooked, is we talk about more sanctions on Russia, but in order to have effective, to circumvent sanctions, you still ought to arrange to make payments somehow. And one of the things the Russian central banks have been very good at doing is circumventing financial sanctions. And this is again down to Nubila's ability to just shows how good she actually is in running her finances. So what we would like to see from Ukraine's point of view is to see her replaced by another Putin lackey who will be nowhere near as competent as she is, and will probably effectively have to bring her back as an advisor if she hasn't fallen out of the window, because she is actually quite competent. But the fact that today, Thursday, Putin started to undermine her is actually a positive effect for us, and that's something we can look forward to. The other thing that's worth calling out, which was mentioned earlier on, is grain prices. So one of the things Putin did call out this week was the fact that there's been a decrease of some 20%, well, you can call out 20%. There has been a decrease of 20% in the volume of Russian grain harvest this year. And he put that down primarily to poor weather, hot weather, and this is partly correct. But one of the other problems that Russia had is if you get paid as a worker in Russia, you get paid more in a factory than you get for being a farm worker, so you might as well go and work in a factory. So Russia has suffered labour problems in it hasn't got enough people to harvest its harvest. The second problem it's had is that effectively farm machinery is very similar to tanks, and the West has banned the export of tank supporting equipment, so Russia hasn't been able to refurbish its tractors, which have been steadily wearing out. So this is another reason why the grain harvest is going down. And sadly for countries in poorer parts of the world, grain is very important to feed people, and there's less grain around, and Putin's attempt to prevent the export of Ukrainian grain has meant grain prices throughout the world have increased, and as a result the poorer nations, who are obviously the most vulnerable to rises in grain export prices, are the ones who are suffering famine, as again is happening in the Horn of Africa. I'm beginning to see it there. So Putin's war is truly spreading around the world. And also talking about competence and incompetence in Russia, the much vaunted Russian security services didn't exactly do a particularly good job in Syria, because the very, very rapid collapse of the Assad regime from we're here on Sunday to the following Sunday he's actually fled off to Russia shows, well, what were these people actually doing? Why didn't they notice that the Assad regime was so vulnerable? So Putin's not turning on his own security services. For some bizarre reason he's turning on the one people who are competent in his organisation. And the conflict that most reminds me of Putin in Syria and his isolated airbase is the French in Indochina, in Dien Bien Phu. And for people who are not necessarily familiar with that, the French isolated one of their air bases and it was subject to artillery fire from the Vietnamese who were fighting for their independence. And the very same thing could happen to his air bases. And for the life of me, I can't understand why the rebels don't just seize this. And of course, the most ludicrous news report of the week was seeing the Russian puppet press talking about the importance of honouring international agreements, and that the new regime in the new regime in Syria should actually support the treaties signed by its predecessors. This ludicrous suggestion that the week before they're actually bombing the rebels and now they should honour their treaties and not go into their air bases is like truly ridiculous. But for some bizarre reason the Russians seem to think that international agreements are entirely one-sided. But the other thing that's also interesting in the Russian withdrawal, some of us will call it fleeing, is that the ships that left the port are now some 10 miles off Syria. And they left so rapidly there isn't actually enough fuel to get them back to the northern ports of Russia. So they're going to be hanging around outside Syria for about the next 10 weeks, whilst they'll be hanging around outside Syria for the next 10 weeks until a Russian aid convoy can actually come and get them. And strangely enough, we hear about the Russian IL-76 planes taking cargo out of the Syrian air bases. The IL-76 is quite a long-range plane, but it's not in a position to fly all the way back to Russia with any decent amount of cargo. So once again, the Russians are found to be very vulnerable, and they clearly did no preparation for the rapid collapse of their bases in Syria. So once again, for some bizarre reason, the Russians are undermining the people who are competent in their organisation, in their country, and while saying the other guys are quite competent, which is not the best way to fight a war. So that's what I'd like to talk about tonight. Has anyone got any questions for me? Try to take them. I would actually say Nabila's strategies would have remained the same had they not been interfered with by Putin. I think she would have carried on rising interest rates. I think she would have done that. The fact that Putin said that interest rates were too high and Putin is the Tsar in Russia means that because he says it's true, people believe it to be true. So that's why I would suspect Nabila will be probably leaving in the next few weeks to go on to another job. And I think that's going to be bad for the Russian economy. Tom. We've had the question about how is Putin going to deal with, how will Putin be able to sleep at night knowing that he's got Assad in his country. To be quite honest, I don't think he'll mind at all. I think it won't cause him any trouble at all. I think he'd be quite happy to have any dictators that he's supported. It's very important for him to provide homes for dictators he's supported because they will continue to stay with him. I mean, he rapidly abandoned Assad and gave him a free home. But one of the other things, I talked about the rapid evacuation of valuable equipment from Syria. Well, apparently one of the things that was evacuated from Syria was 2 tons of currency. 2 tons of euros and dollars, and that's a massive amount of money. I mean, that's something like 250 million euros or dollars or something. So it's interesting to see that the Russians regard it's essential to literally take out banknotes. Tom.
I know that a lot of economy, well, the markets are driven by expectation, and expectations are driven by perceptions. So how do you see perception of Russian economy or situation in Russia has changed over the last month or two?
The point is very valid, is that banks are based on confidence and banks are based on perception. The Russian retail banks are actually very weak in the sense that the reserves they've been holding are actually Russian government debt and mortgages on properties. So in the very near future, I think we can expect to see some of the smaller retail banks in Russia start to collapse. And once that confidence in the banking system goes, there will be a serious run on the banks in Russia. And a serious run on the banks of any country will completely undermine that currency. So the confidence in the Russian banking system by informed people must be very weak. And I'd also argue that the oligarchs are busy taking their money out. We've also seen very marked falls in the Russian stock market for hydrocarbon companies, and the expectations is that they may merge or that they may be nationalised. The compensation that will be paid to shareholders, I would suggest, will be minimal. So I'd suggest that in the future, the lack of confidence will result in a bank run, and the lack of confidence will be people selling Russian stock, and this will in turn cause a collapse in the Russian economy. And also talking about confidence, we spoke about the so-called Russian shadow fleet and how Russia was busy buying up second-rate tankers and operating them where they shouldn't be with substandard crews. This week we definitely saw two Russian, I will refer to them as river tankers, because they were not ocean-going tankers. What they were doing were they were taking fuel oil probably to Crimea, but they shouldn't have been operating in the sea. Those tankers were designed to operate on rivers and not in the sea. They're also over 50 years old, and Russia's track record for maintenance of equipment is very, very poor. And also the fact that the Russian merchant marine doesn't actually have enough officers, competent officers, to run its shipping fleet is something I highlighted was going to be a problem. And this is now coming to pass in that we've seen it. 3 Russian ships in serious trouble. 2 of them have definitely sank and probably a third. And Russian crane ship has also got trouble in the Black Sea. But this is another example that Russian economy is in trouble. And finally, Russian mariners get paid more for going to work in a factory than they get paid for being mariners. So you might as well go and work in a factory. So another reason why we're going to see more Russian ships getting into trouble is the fact that the crews, the maintenance is just not there. So the question was about the confidence that people are going to have in the Russian economy. Is Russia will continue to try and paint itself as a very good person, but the net result of what's actually been seen, grain harvest down, Russian ships sinking, interest rates up at 21% is actually the same as Angola and Iran virtually, so they're not exactly economic powerhouses. So any other questions, guys?
No trade with Russia!
No trade with Russia!
Thank you, Tom. Thanks. One more question.
Right, this is something I can't claim to really know a great deal about, which is cryptocurrencies. But the Russians are increasingly starting to use cryptocurrencies as a way of circumventing sanctions. One of the problems even more problematic about cryptocurrencies is confidence in them. And throughout history, no currency has managed to survive without being backed by a government. So what will eventually happen to cryptocurrencies, I don't know. Will it be a case of like tulip bulbs and other things that South Sea Island bubbles? Will cryptocurrency go the same way? I actually think it will, but wait and see. As with all economics, we can all have our views. Happy to take anything else? I've been asked about hunger in Russia next year. I actually think this is a very real possibility. And I also think it's a very real possibility in the poorer areas of Russia, where their people are going off to fight. And if there was a banking crisis, food distribution would be one of the things that would be hit. So yes, I think there is a very real risk of food crisis in Russia next year. Also, interestingly enough, one of the things that Russia is actually doing is actually now trading in agricultural policy, where they're actually exchanging things like potatoes with Pakistan. So that is actually an interesting point. Yes, I think there could well be problems with hunger in Russia next year. And if that comes to pass, then one of the things we would likely to see is the collapse of the Russian regime. Happy to take anything else? Thank you, Tom. Thank you. And to expedite the collapse of the Russian regime, more sanctions on Russia!
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 More sanctions on
We'll
Russia!
be back after a short musical break. Well said.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
But friends, it's very important to say that yesterday the Russians have had one of the biggest attacks against Kiev and against other cities in Ukraine. They have also used, once again, this new weapon of theirs they brag about so much, the Usyk. Now, its use has been quite underwhelming this day. Apparently they struck a factory, and the factory itself is still there. I mean, there was damage done, obviously, but it wasn't this new weapon of mass destruction on the level of a nuclear warhead, nothing like that. I mean, their Iskanders and Kinjals proved to be much more destructive in Kiev. And speaking of which, my friends, soon it's going to be Christmas. And the Russians, yesterday, they struck the church of St. Nicholas in Kiev, who is the patron saint of Christmas at the end of the day. Now this is how the Russians show their Christmas spirit to the rest of the world, by striking churches with their missiles. This nation who claims that, oh, Ukraine is persecuting the Christians, the Russian Orthodox Christians. Complete baloney, my friends, complete nonsense. In the meantime, the Russians don't shy away from striking Ukrainian churches left, right and center. Orthodox churches, Catholic churches, Jewish churches, it doesn't matter. They will strike anything. Because, my friends, this is not a religious war we have right now. This is a political war started by Putin so that he could keep his old behind on the seat in the Kremlin. You see, Putin was scared that the Ukrainian people did not want to be a puppet of Russia. He was scared that he would be put in the history books as the man that allowed Ukraine to slip from the grip of the Russian terrorist regime. He didn't want that. He wanted to be known as the new Peter the Great. Speaking of which, here's a funny little bit of trivia of Peter the Great. He wasn't even Russian. He was French. He was known as Pierre back then. And Catherine the Great, Katerina Великая, not so great at the end of the day, she was German. These people the Russians worship, they aren't even Russian. And yet they have been brainwashed for generations to worship these individuals they know nothing about. My friends, you know, it struck me right now. I remembered something important. There's this song, very interesting song. I believe it's Legendarny Sevastopol, something like that. I'm sure the people who speak Russian around us, they remember this song. It goes, Legendarny Sevastopol, something like that. And they speak about how unbreakable Sevastopol was, about how it resists any attack. Well, here's a funny bit of trivia for you. Every single time Sevastopol was besieged, it fell to the besiegers. Every single time. There was the single time that Sevastopol won a siege, when it was being besieged. Oh, some lovely bubbles here, look at that. Who did that? It was you. Oh, it was this lovely lady over there. Oh, no, it was that guy. Very nice. But alas, my friends, I digress. The point we're making is, the Russian terrorist regime has their usual propaganda. They don't have an actual history to teach their people. They have propaganda on top of propaganda on top of propaganda. A Frenchman and a German woman. Those are the people they worship as these big Russians. Oh, you know, they're great Russians. They're our guys. Not even Russian. But if it makes them feel any better, they were not even great to begin with. They were butchers, like many other people in their history, many other of their leaders. This is why they worship Putin so much nowadays, my friends. There's actually items made of Putin. I'm not joking. In some Russian churches right now, there's icons of Putin. Putin's face as a potential future saint.
And the Greek churches too, some of them.
In some Greek Orthodox churches, thank you, Anders.
In Greece, it's like
Now this is truly disgusting behavior, to be making a saint out of a butcher. You know, it's not unheard of. It has happened in certain religious views before, to make saints out of butchers. However, my friends, it's not something we should appease, it's not something we should accept, it's not something we should be silent about.
In the Greek churches, they have Russian flags and they go around.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You know, that is correct. That is true. In some places around the world, in Cyprus and Greece and many places in the world, there are some communities of people who support Putin, who support Russia. I mean, I remember very well in Serbia, for example. Serbia is a big country to mention on this. They worship Russia. They say, oh, you know, the Russians, they're our brothers, man, they're our brothers. I would be ashamed of having such a brother in my family. I'll be honest with you, my friends. I wouldn't be speaking about that with pride. I would be trying to make absolute sure that people do not know that we are related. Oh, exactly.
About something in the minute. I'll ask you about this.
No problem. But my friends, there's another important thing that we need to say about this new weapon Oryeshnik. Now there's a misplaced level of fear linked to this weapon. But personally, I don't think it matters that much. I mean, the Russians were still developing it. They didn't finish developing it. They're not even sure themselves how Oryeshnik works. And they're using it now out of desperation because they don't know what else to use at the moment. How are you, my friend? Having a good night? I can't say I heard what this gentleman said, but, you know, I hope it was something good. Ho, 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 ho. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Now, my friends, it's important to say also that even the Russian flag itself, you know, not even the flag, but the coat of arms they have, the two-headed eagle. Now, some people might think, oh, you know, that's a Russian symbol, right? Wrong. They even stole that. They call a German woman and a Frenchman as some of their greatest heroes. They say that the Kievan Rus was theirs, although it was started in Kiev. And they use the old Byzantine symbol of the two-headed eagle as their symbol also. You see, they borrow and steal from many different cultures and then say, oh, you know, that's Russian culture. Yeah, that's ours. It's like that old meme, that very funny meme of an individual having an object in his hand saying, I made this, gives it to another man, then the man looks at it, watches the individual who made it walk away, he turns to another guy, I made this. This is how Russia functions as a country. And we need to know what we're dealing with, my friends. We need to know the kind of terrorist regime we are dealing with. Now Ukraine, we did not steal our flag from anyone. We have our flag symbolizing Ukraine itself. The wide fields of wheat and the clear blue sky. That is the symbol of our flag. Of course, we also have to remember the symbol of the British flag. The three crosses of St. George. Oh, that's right, that's right. There we go. Some lovely gentlemen here. Of St. George, St. Andrew, and St. Patrick. We have to remember these things, my friends. I remember the Portuguese flag. It's red and green. The red being in a higher ratio to green, which is the blood that was spilled to achieve control of that little piece of land that they have. Every flag has its symbols, my friends. And one day, the Russian flag will have to change its symbolism too. It will have to remove the red from its flag, to remove the blood from the bottom of the flag. And then it will be a flag of a new Russia that might have a future. Unlike Putin's Russia.
Replace it with yellow.
Sorry?
Replace red with yellow.
Oh, well, let's keep it white. Let's keep it white. White is better than red. But speaking of yellow, that reminds me of the Russian imperial flag, which, if I'm not mistaken, is black, yellow, and white. That's right. Oh, there's a very good little meme, little picture I've seen being shared around in the pro-Russian channels of a guy with a swastika and with a little flag on his shoulder. And the Russians were saying, look, that's a Ukrainian flag, Nazi, Ukro-Nazi.
They were so happy about it. I almost felt bad to realize that it was in fact the Russian imperial flag, but it was just worn out. The tattoo was a little bit worn out. It was clearly a tricolor. You know, the black was a bit worn out, but the yellow was visible. So the black looked a little bit like blue. And those foolish, poor wretches, they thought that was a Ukrainian flag. It was one of theirs. One of their buddies. But my friends, you know, sometimes people even came to us asking us, oh, why are you saying Slava Nazi? What does Slava Nazi mean? That's not what we're saying, guys. We're saying Slava Nazi ye. This is the problem with different languages, or rather it's the beauty of different languages. Sometimes they mean different things. Glory to the nation. Nothing to do with Nazis. But of course, I know an individual who went on this little podcast, this little interview with one of these, you know, unbiased, quote-unquote YouTubers who, just by pure coincidence, always shills for Russia. And he went on his little interview and he started saying, oh, you know, I went to the Ukrainian military, but they're all a bunch of Nazis. They were saying, Slava Nazi every day, glory to Nazi. But my friends, this is what foolishness sounds like. A person who doesn't understand what he hears and who allows ignorance to dictate the meaning of the words he does not understand. If people don't understand what we're saying here, we welcome them to ask us. There's nothing wrong with asking, but there is a lot wrong with making assumptions without knowing. That, my friends, is how we join the ranks of the insane. And we should not do that, ever. Before I forget, it's a very important funny little clip that I need to speak of. You know, Mr. Putin, the very much praised individual by the far right, who always says, oh, look how clearly he speaks, how beautiful his language is. He always speaks with such conviction. I mean, a couple of days ago, he started mumbling about just to try to spell a sentence. I guess Putin's age is finally catching up with him, at long last. But I think we should not expect him to kick the bucket by himself. We should give him a little bit of help with that. Just a little push, you know? That's all it takes sometimes. And with individuals like Putin, I wish Jan was here. Jan has a beautiful little poster that says, Putin, let's skip to the part when you shoot yourself in a bunker. A beautiful message. A message of peace at long last. And that is the best way of achieving peace in Ukraine, is to remove this cancer from the world, remove Putin, remove his underlings, remove the terrorist regime, and then we can have a better world. Then we have a world that actually respects nuclear demilitarization and respects the nations who do it. My friends, once again, Ukraine has given up the third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. What has it gotten in return? Betrayal by the Russian terrorist regime and by the international community, who barely ever mentions Ukraine nowadays. But alas, my friends, even in these days of need, even in these days of betrayal, we need to always remember to be grateful for the good done to us also. It is no coincidence that our flag, the flag of hope, is right there on top of many buildings here in front of us. That is proof that there are some people who still remember, some people who still know the promises made to the Ukrainian people so many years ago, and some people who will still be willing to make sure that those promises come true. That, my friends, is something to be hoping for, something worth having hope in. And that's why we come here, to let people know what they should hope for, what they should strive for, what they should work towards, so that we all can have a better future. Not only as Ukraine, as the UK, as Europe, but as a species. We will have that better future if we can envision a better future, and not if we start trying to move back into the past. That is when the future dies, and we have to avoid that at any cost. Now, my friends, I think it's important to always remember not only what has been happening in Ukraine, but what has happened in many other countries who have had a similar struggle to the struggle of the Ukrainian people nowadays, where heroes laid their lives for a greater cause. And when they have achieved that greater cause, like in this country, where we have the cenotaph to remind people of the sacrifices of those who have laid down their lives for their freedom. And in the name of those who have died, in the name of those who have suffered, I invite you all to do, please have a seat. I invite you all to do a minute of silence. Thank you. Of course, once again, my friends, every single day of this war increases that casualty rate, increases the amount of people who had to die for this pointless war started by the Russian terrorist regime. Not too long ago, Putin has made a little announcement. He claimed there should be an experiment done, where he starts shooting Oryashnik into the center of Kyiv, and Ukrainians use every single little bit of their air defense systems to defend themselves against it. First of all, what a pathetic way to try to get the Ukrainians to lower their guards in the rest of Ukraine. The Russians have done this so many times already, saying they would not attack. Oh no, this is Western propaganda, and then attacking during the night. They've done this countless times, my friends. If the Ukrainians truly did concentrate all of their air defense systems in Kyiv, the Russians would rain hell on all the other cities of Ukraine. They would be laughing at the stupidity of trusting the Russian president, as they know that he is not trustworthy, that he never was trustworthy. That's the first stupid thing about this little saying, little stunt Putin has pulled off. The second stupid thing is the fact that Russia has almost no Oryashniks. This is a clear bluff. Putin cannot use that many of them because he doesn't have many of them. It has been a weapon that has been in development for a long time now, and the development has not fully ended. They're not fully tested that weapon yet. Which is exactly why another empty threat they made of putting a nuclear warhead in the Oryashnik is another stupid thing they say that is clearly not true. They have not tested Oryashnik with a nuclear warhead even once. If they were stupid enough to try to put one in an Oryashnik missile now without testing it, they would be risking blowing themselves up. Which of course we would welcome if the Russian military wants to do that. Of course, Thomas, go ahead.
It's worth calling out at this point that only several years ago, the United States and Russia signed a treaty saying there's going to be non-proliferation of intermediate-range nuclear missiles. The Oryashnik is actually an intermediate-range nuclear weapon, and that's what it's been designed for, and that's what it's been developed for. Now, we know Russia doesn't honour its treaties, but Putin openly is now saying that he's developing an intermediate-range nuclear-capable missile. So what he's actually saying is the treaty which his predecessors signed, they're actually completely ignoring. So this is once again an example of Russia lying and expecting different standards from other people. So it's well worth calling out. If you want to try and trust Russia, they can't even lie consistently. So remember this Oryashnik thing, which doesn't actually work very well, and there isn't many of them, is an admission
the treaty they've signed, they don't actually honour.
Russia lies,
Thank you.
Russia lies, Russia lies all the time. Russia lies, Russia lies, Russia lies all the time. Russia lies, Russia lies, Russia lies all the time.
Hello everyone, Garth here. Just a few words, and it's something which has just happened, and I wanted to share with you something which is simple, but I think spoke a hell of a lot. I'm standing there, right, with my Ukrainian flag, you know, greeting people, looking at people. A couple of British policemen armed with submachine guns walk past. The first thing to say, did I feel scared? No, because I think that they're there to protect us. And second, and most important, as they walked right past me, what did they do? Did they ignore me? No. Did they say anything threatening to me? No. What did they say? They said, hi, how are you? And I was there holding a Ukrainian flag, and for all intents and purposes, I was Ukrainian. And I thought, does that not speak volumes for Ukraine, this country, for Ukrainians? That our policemen just think that we are ordinary people, that we are friends. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much to both of you, my friends, for speaking out. It's very important. It's very good for different people to come here to give some of their own mind, to give a piece of their own mind. And now, my friends, we will have, after some shouting, because I was encouraged to do a little bit of these shouts that we have. So let's say it before our musical break. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!
Slava нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Now, my friends, a little musical break.
Україна,
Понад усе!
Україна,
Понад усе!
Україна.
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі.
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі. You know, this idea that Putin is supposedly a great speaker and a great thinker, and that he thinks up all of these 4D chess moves, is very bewildering. It is very stupid. But it reminds me of something else that has been happening lately, especially the behavior of people like Tucker Carlson, who went running to Russia once again, begging for another little paycheck of rubles that might be worthless in a year or two, but alas, I guess he doesn't think about that. So Tucker Carlson, long ago, he tried to become a CIA agent, actually. And Putin actually speaks about this on their little interview, quote unquote. But he failed. And then he decided to become a shill for the rest of his life. Well, it's quite a career shift, I have to say. But let's see where that leads him. Nowhere good, I'm sure. As he has been in Russia once again. And this time he spoke with Lavrov, the horseface, one of the main speakers of the Russian terrorist regime nowadays. One of their fall guys, most likely. One of the people who they will throw under the bus when they inevitably collapse. And he was once again licking the boots and shining the shoes off all of these ideas, these silly ideas that the Russian terrorist regime perpetrates on a daily basis. Now, it's quite silly, quite strange for me to see, to look at these people and look at the people who are watching their shows and try to get in their heads. They know so little about the situation in Ukraine. They know so little about why it's being waged, why is this war started, how is it going to end, what are the solutions to this war. They know so unbelievably little. And yet, they feel so strongly about it. Oh, you know, the Ukraine, we don't want to help the Ukraine. Oh, why should we? What's in it for us? We should help our own country, yeah. And they forget the fact that you help your allies abroad, make sure that they win against your enemies abroad, prevents you from being directly involved in conflicts. I know it's almost quantum mechanics. It's the next level sometimes of 4D chess. I joke, of course, it's not. It's very clear-cut and straightforward, but some people, in their tiny little brains, they must think that giving a homeless man an artillery shell or a couple of bullets is going to help him in his daily life. That's what they usually say. Oh, you know, why are we helping Ukraine? Why don't we help the homeless instead? And that's funny, because it's exactly the same people who in times of peace don't want to help the homeless at all, don't want to give them anything. But now that the United Kingdom is rightfully so helping Ukraine, they don't like it at all. And these are the individuals that Tucker Carlson represents. These are the individuals who gobble up what he preaches. These are the individuals, my friends, who we need to be careful with. Very ignorant individuals who don't understand anything about anything, really, of how the world works. That's where we come in, my friends. We need to tell people what's going on in Ukraine and how we can end this war. Solutions. That is what we are here to talk about. For those who are curious on how to stop this war, for those who are curious on how to prevent further wars with Russia. Hey Michael, how are you, my friend? We're always here willing to speak and tell people what can be done to create a better world at long last. A world without the terrorist Russian regime. It's not easy, but it is a simple solution. Straightforward, really. To provide Ukraine with what's necessary to win, and not to just survive a couple of days' war. The way, my friends, the way this war has been tackled has been absolutely atrocious.
The free world showed
И недавно
that at least partially Russia is right about it. At least partially the free world chose not to care, chose not to lift a finger, not to do much at all. Which is sad, really. It should have been done differently. This war could have been ended long ago. If at the beginning of the massive invasion, of the full-scale invasion that the Russian terrorist regime has committed almost 3 years ago, if at the beginning Ukraine got the weapons it needed, then this war would have ended immediately. But alas, here we are, again, trying to hope for a better future, trying to hope for a better life for our children, for the people who will come after us, who will have to live on this earth after us. It is difficult to imagine people in the future making better choices than we will if humanity simply refuses to learn with its mistakes, simply refuses to learn with its history. If humanity prefers to trust influencers and entertainers like Joe Rogan instead of listening and hearing and looking at the facts at hand, looking at what's going on, if humanity truly chooses to act in that way, then my friends, I don't know what else can be done. But for now, we stand here once again. We are here to tell people what's going on. We are here to make that change happen. And for that, I'd like to say to all of you, thank you. Now, my friends, I have to remind you all that next week and the week after, there will be no rallies on Wednesday. Wednesdays off. You know, like Seeds Russian assets off, same way as that. No rally next week's Wednesday, no rally the Wednesday after. Друзі, всім нагадую, що наступний тиждень немає протесту у середу, і тиждень після нього також не буде протесту у середу. Наступні дві середи, наступні 2 тижні немає протестів у середу через Різдво і через Новий рік. Тому, якщо хочете, можете сюди приходити, ми нікому не забороняємо, але протесту тут не буде. До речі, у наступну середу, наступного тижня не буде транспортів, звісно, тому що на Різдво тут немає транспортів, так що я би нікому не рекомендував приходити. Але це все на ваш вибір. І знову ж таки дякую вам всім за те, що прийшли сьогодні. У п'ятницю і в неділю будуть протести, як завжди. Так що, будь ласка, приходьте, якщо можете. Now, my friends, there's always a lot that we come here to say. A lot that needs to be said. A lot that people have not heard yet. A lot that people have not been allowed to listen to. And that is why we are here. We need to tell people what the mainstream media, what nowadays the media will not speak about. Which is unfortunate, because this is unbelievably important. To tell people what's going on in Ukraine and how to end this war for good. Not for a day, a week, or a month, but forever. The best way to stop the Russian terrorist regime. But of course it seems more and more likely, like Ukraine will have to negotiate its territories away in a way, one way or another. If that is the case, my friends, if Ukraine truly does have to sell land for peace, it will be a great injustice. But at the very least, if it happens, we need to make sure to let everyone know that if Ukraine sells land for peace again, there will need to be clear-cut assurances. Assurances that simply were not there in the other agreements. I mean, they were there, but they were not kept. Assurances that were not respected, even by the free world. And if the free world does not respect its treaties, what can be said about terrorist regimes like Russia? They will never sign the treaties that they don't respect, my friends. And even if they sign them, they will not actually keep their word, ever. They have proven this to be true. The best way for Ukraine to be safe is for Ukraine to join NATO. If that is not possible, then with a ceasefire, there has been a consideration to put some Western troops at the border between Ukraine and Russia to make sure Russia does not invade, and it will keep them from invading, surely. because they're still afraid of the rest of the free world. They're simply not afraid of breaking their word. But the conversation about Ukraine getting nuclear weapons, once again, my friends, I don't think that that is going to be a functional ending for this war. First of all, it's unbelievably expensive. Secondly of all, Russia has more nukes than Ukraine. It will always have more nukes than Ukraine. So the only thing Ukraine will have, if it has nuclear weapons now, will be a small little ability to bluff their way into a stronger position in negotiations. And we've seen it already that Russia is very good at bluffing. Their bluffs have been so stupid, and yet people keep falling for them. I am honestly quite astonished by this whole situation. However, it is what it is, and we need to move towards better solutions, no matter what the situation at hand is. We just need to remember this above all. Every single day that we postpone this decision of what will be the solution to the war in Ukraine, every single day will make that final decision more and more difficult. And that is one of our main messages here. Слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна! 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 Героям України тричі!
Слава, слава, слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть, смерть, смерть!
And now, my friends, we are going to end this rally the same way as we started it, with the Ukrainian anthem.
Ні слава, ні воля, ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття, козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття, козацького роду.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Дякую.
97 to 2010. It got worse, didn't it? Now are they idle? Diane Abbott is opened the club. No, she doesn't like
Ты туда идешь?
Или даже на автобусе лучше.
Ну вот здесь остановка автобусная. 12-я остановка.
Да, А ви звідкіля ви родом? Звідкіля родом?
З Харкова.
А ти
А
хто?
ви?
Ми з Донецька.
Донецька. Не пам'ятаю, чи бачила вас раніше тут, чи ні. Ангеліна, як вас звати?
Віталік.
Вітаю. Дуже приємно. В неділю приходьте, чи як?
Так. Побачимось. Що забув?
stand clear of the opening door.
Ich glaube, die haben nur so 5 Plätze mehr als normaler Wasser. Ja, ja. Gefällt's dir mal so?
Ja.
Schön hier, oder?
Ja.
Ich bin auch gerade ein bisschen müde. Bist du gerade auch? Wir sind auch nicht alt. Ja, das ist mein Links ab.
Hier ist wieder der Lippe. Da vorne kommt das Land rein.
Ja. Ist da rechts das Fang, ja. Die Fenster leuchten. Ja, das ist die Station.
8 ônibus diferentes. Não, acho que o não vai encontrando lá esse. Acho que é saída lá atrás. Tá? Não. Qual desse tamanho, não? Aquele meio. Qual o valor? São muito caros, a gente não vai querer não, né? Amiga, eu vou pra casa, então, por onde? Pra casa do Cora. Já passou 5 minutos. Mas a porca ligou. E aí, foi? A minha internet tá pressionando. Tá ligado? Não tá não, perdão. Deve estar pedindo perdão. Só deve haver 7, amiga. É perdão, é? Dia. Como essa Londres ainda vai me dar uma coisa pra ficar? Ei, moço, devia ter limpado aqui para-brisa aqui em cima. Vou apreciar a cidade. Não foi. Tá ligado? Agora tá ligado, tá conectado aqui. Ela não recebe mensagem. Ela foi agora, não vamos saber. Ela chega em casa mais rápido porque a gente chega lá. Não é não? Ah, achei que descer mesmo de qualquer modo. 14 falas pra ela responder. Por isso que eu queria que ela tivesse vindo. Não tinha o que pensar. Teve problema e a solução era de resolver logo. Não porque eu não pudesse resolver amanhã, mas por não ser uma coisa nossa. Tinha urgência. É o quê? Você tá pensando? Ficar todo mundo junto logo, tá? Você vai ficar sem internet e coisa, sem sinais, sem chip. Capaz dela ainda ficar chateada. Chama ela sozinha. Não, se ela não fica não, você nem querer. Deixa ela só escolher. Que não era pra ter dado a ela a escolha. Ela respondeu, então deve ser. Pois pronto, eu não entendi nada e eu tava andando. Tava uma hora que eu tava com a Nicole, sei lá. Aí eu ignorei. Aí ela falou assim, ah, comprou. Aí eu comprei também. Aí eu comprou pra mim, aí ela comprou. Aí eu me diz o valor da parcela e o vencimento. Aí ela pegou e falou, né? Por que ela não me deu de aniversário, né? Ah? Por que ela não me deu de aniversário? Ela falou o valor? Falou! Claro, também, porque acho que ontem também ficou coisa. A Breda já comprou de segundo lote. Foi? Tá bom, tá lá. Eu não entendi nada. Quanto o valor? Foi 6 vezes de 30 e tanto. Não sei nem o que foi que compraram.
Какая цель трансляции и как флаг Украины коррелирует с Лондоном? И причем здесь фраза про Киев? Фраза про Киев — это была тема этой трансляции. Цель трансляции я еще не выключил, потому что довольно много в онлайне. И я жду, пока все, чем дольше я в онлайне, тем больше людей подписывается. Еще вопросы? Если меня слышно, конечно. Должно быть слышно. Украина сосать. Так, Саша, идешь отдыхать на 1 минуту.
We apologize for any inconvenience to your journey. 148 to Camberwell Green.
Я думал, с Киева. Нет, не с Киева. Правда, что англичане пьют чай только из пакетиков, и правда, что там очень много приезжих мусульман. Ну, они уже не приезжие, они местные, их очень много. Ну и приезжих много. Пьют чай только из пакетиков. Нет, любой чай пьют. Чай, но еще туда добавляют молоко. На значке флаг правильный. Ну, синий вверху. Мусульман много. Самое популярное имя Мухаммед. Где вы находитесь? Мы находимся в Лондоне. Вообще лучше, хуже Киева. Вообще лучше, хуже Киева. В Киеве я не жил. Не знаю, как, с чем сравнивать. Но написано Киев, мати, нация дается по отцу. Получается, русский город. Ну, можешь считать его русским, каким хочешь. Ты можешь весь мир считать русским. Аляску можешь считать русским. Так, у вас есть еще 20 минут вопросы позадавать. Только не знаю, как хорошо ли слышно. Сел бы наперед, но там окно запотевшее. Ничего не будет видно. И вообще, когда эта фраза прозвучала, русских никаких не было. Лондон, конечно, лучше, чем Киев. Не знаю, не сравнивал. Киев, наверное, дешевле. Кто ты по жизни? Заня приводный или туршлаг с гривой. Ну, тут надо чуть-чуть поучиться писать правильно. Русские вперед. Русские назад. А Женю кота заблокируем на какое-то время, чтоб не писал всякую ерунду. Будете ли вы смотреть Усика бой боксерский или нет? Куда едешь? Еду домой. Nice. Почему держу этот стрим до сих пор? Ну, думаю, что он будет рекордный у меня по просмотрам. 200 тысяч просмотров надо. И 10 тысяч подписчиков. Почему, конечно, лучше по погоде, например, наверное, не в пользу Лондона. Ну, погода здесь там плюс 10, плюс 15 круглый год. Зимой плюс 15, летом... Не, зимой плюс 10, летом плюс 15. И так все время. Можно в кофте ходить. В теплой кофте круглый год, короче. Хочешь вернуться домой. Ну, смотря где мой дом. Мой дом сейчас здесь. Вы не поняли. В Лондоне действительно так круто. Как круто. Работать надо. Что дома, что в Лондоне. В любом городе мира нужно работать. Чтобы было круто. А вообще откуда родом? Я с Донецкой области родом. Мне летом жарче 25. Ну, 30 бывает. Там, иногда плюс 30. Если 30, это считается очень жарко. 35 это считается, что уже все. Люди не выходят на улицу. Также и зимой, если там плюс 5 или 0, тоже это считается очень холодно. Так, осталось минут 15. 2 часа 30 минут будет, и я закончу. Зато нет слякоти. Ну, слякоти нету, да. Грязи нету. Слякоти нету. Снега нету. Это да. Где легче жить, в Лондоне или в Донецкой до известных событий? Легче? Ну, легче, наверное, в Донецкой области. Нет такой суеты огромной. Тут все ты должен делать быстро и продуманно. В Донецкой области все попроще. В маленьких городах все попроще. Тут население под 10 миллионов жителей. Если дети русские, то получается и мать русская. Ну, смотря как считать, Считает по отцу, по родителям считают. Фамилию отцовскую же берут. Смотря на каком языке говорят. Где родился, где родина. У нас осталось минут 10, не больше. Если медвежонок родился в конюшне, то он медведь, он не конь. Вот мусульмане. Так, аналогия не очень понятна. Кто считает, что это война против православия? Нет, это война не против православия, это война больного человека, который решил, что он может менять историю, и ему ничего за это не будет. Если православный убивает православного, то это, извращенная война. Кто тут первый раз? Подписывайтесь. Таких стримов бывает пару за неделю, за 10 дней. Парочку раз я выхожу на стримы, на митинги. Если не хотите пропускать, подписывайтесь. Согласен с вами про Путина. Украина тоже виновата. Очень легкий ответ есть на такое, кто виноват. Кто напал, тот и Гитлер. Вот. Кто напал, тот и Гитлер. Кто перешел государственную границу с оружием в руках, тот и виноват. В России был в детстве пару раз в Калининградской области. И в самом раннем детстве был в Казани. Из-за чего началось все, припомни, если не трудно. Началось, что русские решили захватить Украину и зашли в Луганскую, Донецкую область и начали захватывать города. Вот с чего началось. Они думали, что будет все легко, как с Крымом. Думайте, как ребенок. Ну, думай, как взрослый тогда. Покинь помещение, как я люблю говорить. У нас осталось 5 минут. Я сейчас выхожу, пройдусь чуть-чуть, и я буду отключаться. Спасибо. Все, 5 минут осталось. Ты не прав. Зачем русских не оставляли в покое? Каких русских? Где русских? Кто их трогал? Где бой были в Лер? Ничего не понятно. А что было до 22-го? Какое мнение? До 22-го русские захватили часть Луганской области, Донецкой области и оккупировали эти земли. Вот что было до 22-го. Чому неньку не борониш, герой? Потому что я в Лондоне живу, в Донецке и Луганске, где бои были. Что тут еще было? Что было до? Думайте как ребенок. Спасибо. 5 минут осталось. Даже меньше. А в 14-е мнение. В 14-м русские пересекли границу в Луганской и Донецкой областях и начали захватывать города и сделали такой местный переворот. Ну, хунта. Захватили города, оккупировали. По поводу войны все не так просто. Например, не очень понятна такая сплоченность Европы и США в помощи Украины. Причем такой сплоченности нет ни в отношении к другим странам, которые требуют помощи. Ну, взять Израиль. Израилю помогают от души. Украине помогают так, похлопывают по плечу. И если Запад, США, Европа отдаст Украину России, ну, тогда Россия придет в Европу, в Евросоюз и заберет страны, те, которые были когда-то в Советском Союзе. Где переводы? Почему ваша армия пропустила перевороты? Почему ваша армия пропустила? Ну, потому что никто не ожидал удар в спину. Кто мог ожидать, что на Украину нападет Россия? Никто этого не ожидал. Русские сделали переворот. Да, русские сделали переворот. Что за бред несешь? Дима, можешь переключиться на другой канал. Там повеселее. У нас осталось пару минут. Если вам понравилось, то подписывайтесь, и буду выходить чуть почаще. Usyk победит 35%, нет 65%, 223 голоса. В смысле не ожидала? Российские войска стояли целый год, учения проводили перед вами. Ну вот. И при этом они говорили, что мы никогда не нападем, что у вас бред, что вы бредите. Но потом напало. Так что кто напал, тот и Гитлер. Это вопрос был, русские сделали переворот. Это вопрос, да, русские сделали переворот на Донбассе. Все, всем пока.